Welcome to Creating Better Products, where we explore the real world stories from product leaders, not just their successes, but also their failures and their lessons learned. You will get practical tips that you can apply tomorrow. I'm your host, Sabrina Mach. I have almost 2 decades of experience and I love learning from others. This is why my mission is to share the stories of amazing product leaders with you and the world. And today we will be talking about product thinking and how engineering and technology leaders can apply this in their work. And it's such a fascinating topic. So my guest today is Matjaž Pečan, and you're joining me today to talk about bringing product thinking into your engineering practice. You are a staff engineer at Doctolib, and what really got me excited when we started talking the first time was actually realizing your very, very strong focus on customer value and bringing product thinking into everything that you do, which is why we're talking today. So, Matjaž, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for introducing me. Such a nice introduction. I was really excited to talk to you when we first met because I saw that you were somebody that I can talk about product in such a valuable way, and I can get great feedback and information from you. Right? Like I've been an engineer now at Doctolib for a year, so I'm fairly new here, but I've been in the industry for about 15 years, starting in Slovenia. Studied electrical engineering initially, but I found software to be a lot more, value driven and easier to actually get value out of yourself, faster cycles and so on. It makes it easier to learn. And then I did a fair amount of development in Slovenia as a junior and then senior engineer, working for a sport trader like betting, which ended up not being the best experience for me because it's morally not my cup of tea. And then I worked for a dating site in Berlin, like a company with multiple dating properties called Spark Networks. Moved into engineering management. I was a director of engineering at the end of my tenure with Spark Networks, leading 5 teams, and then moved on to Wayfair for about a year and a half as an associate engineering manager, and then moved back into IC. First at Fling for about 6 months, and then I had like a short stint at Pipro, and then moved on to Doctolib just last year in January. And
Cool.
I've been enjoying my whole time here.
What is IC? You mentioned you moved back into IC. What does that stand for?
Um, Individual contribution. So instead
Ah,
of being somebody who manages other people, I just make sure that we do the projects that we need to do instead of that. I like people. I like mentoring. I think we had some discussions about that already. I love growing people, and I think one of the important parts of being a staff engineer is also helping others grow, right? And being kind of the multiplier effect in a team, in an organization. And I strive to do that a lot. And I find that I'm more able to do that as an individual contributor, as a staff engineer, instead of being a manager. I found way too much work was spent in meetings as a manager, and I don't know. I'm not built for it.
it's really fascinating to hear your journey along many different types of companies. And I'm really curious to hear, how did you first get drawn into product thinking? From in your early days, I imagine the focus was very much on technology. When did that shift happen for you to look beyond technology and think about value?
The shift started happening fairly early, actually. That's the interesting thing. I was working with one of the let's say banking solutions that we were working with. So Sportradar, before I was part of Sportradar, we were part of a small company in Ljubljana in Slovenia. I was like 30 people strong, and most of the work that we did was working with like as outsource for other companies, and one of them was working with company that was building an e-banking solution. And then already, like somebody who was using e-banking in Slovenia, which was fairly advanced, right? I really wanted to understand like why this e-banking solution, what is the value for it? And it was interesting because it's like an add-on solution to an existing bank core, right? So it's something that has to integrate with something that already exists, but has to also have a great experience, or as great an experience as it can for the customer, for the user. So it was very challenging. On one side, you have like technical limitations, and then you have a product that should fulfill the needs of people. And to me, focusing on that needs and understanding that needs helped me circumnavigate the limitations that the technical side had. Right. So for me, the importance started emerging fairly quickly, but then the development of that product thinking has been especially accelerated in these last couple of years. So moving onto Wayfair from Spark. At Spark, we were already very focused on, improving the experience of the user, but we were already in that stage where it's like a lot of old technology, very hard to move sometimes. We did manage to do some changes that really improved the everyday experience of the user. One of them was ensuring that the messages that they sent were instantly received by the other party, which it would be shocking to me. Still, it was shocking to me to find out that like even in 2019 we still had that problem. But it's, based on your stack, sometimes things are hard to do. But that was a definite improvement of the value for the customer, right? Suddenly you're talking to somebody instead of sending letters and then waiting for the letter to arrive at some point. Uh, yeah, this definitely was like a big change for me. And then moving on to Wayfair, Wayfair had like a very high focus on customer value, on understanding the customer, walking hundreds of kilometers in their shoes, trying to understand how things are. Um, that was nice and it was interesting, but I didn't get that close. And then probably the biggest change for me was Flink. Flink is I don't know if everybody knows about it, but it's basically a company where you can order food very quickly, and somebody will cycle up to your place with some things in their like on their bike, and then you're gonna get those things and you're gonna use them to make food and stuff like that. Um, Having a process wherein everybody who joins the company has to do that work, has to be in a place where they're packing that work, where they have to deliver the food to people, right? And even if it's just once a quarter, it's really valuable because now you see the people who you're working with, like who you're working for. And I don't mean just the user of the app, right? I'm also talking about the people who are in the actual packing facility, the people who are on the bikes, cycling to the like they as much as users as everybody else, right? And they're critical to the functioning of everything. So you should understand them, right? And then that value proposition that we were talking about, that product thinking helps you recycle things, find solutions to problems that you didn't even know existed if you didn't see them. And now Doctolib as well, right? Doctolib has a system where we get to, shadow actual support staff. We get to shadow customer support. We get the opportunity to actually work with or talk to some of our customers directly. And then, I mean, plus we are customers, we're humans, so we get to use Doctolib every day if we need to. Hopefully not too much, but you can learn from that as well. Yeah, that's it's something that I'm just looking forward to, helping people have a better experience with their healthcare journey. That's really
Yeah.
something I can care about.
So the strongest shift really happened when you were able to step into the shoes of some of the people who deliver the service at Flink as delivering the food, but also experiencing the service and then doing that not just there, but also at Doctolib. And that really brings it to life for you as an engineer. Now, what does this mean in your day to day work when you are creating tech solutions? How does that flow into your work and how does that influence that?
It really brings me closer to giving me a need to understand what is it that we're achieving for the customer. What is it that they're actually trying to get to, right? And then, especially with things like we had issues with bugs, right? And then you have a bug, and you start talking to a customer, or you start reading the description that the customer has left, and you try to understand like why is this something that they're considering a bug, and then you get to the point where you see that they're not just considering this a bug; they're already creating workarounds in your product for the
Mm.
problems that you've created, right? By making it the way that it was. And this, it's a natural thing. Things evolve. You have to do something fast. You create some kind of tech debt, or you don't create the greatest of experiences sometimes. And then people adapt and they find ways to use it, and they find ways to, you could say, abuse it, right? I didn't mean this in a bad way. It's not there, they didn't mean anything bad, but they have found a feature now. Something that was a bug before is now a feature. And now you have to understand, like, why is it that they do that? Why does somebody who is, I don't know, running uh, radiology use a concept of like a resource that should be dedicated, but assign it to three people at the same time? Like, why do they do these things? It's because they are fulfilling a need, right? Like the radiology equipment is expensive. You want to use it as much as you can. You don't need the radiology equipment for the whole time that the person is there. Instead, you need it for like, I don't know, a third of the time. So the solution makes sense, right? They found the best solution for the problem, even though we didn't necessarily build it that way. But they
Yeah.
found the way to use it. And now, if we don't understand what their needs are, we might fix a bug and break their experience, and that's not okay, right? And then the idea is, how do we use this knowledge that we've accumulated? How do we interact with our customers to get even better ideas on how we could help them? Because every minute that we shave off of their time that they would spend, doing administrative work means that there's another minute that they can spend with a patient. And it
Yeah.
helps all of us, right? Like we're all in the end going to be patients. Sadly, the reality is like that. So help yourself. Where product thinking comes from, I think it's like understanding that it's in the end it's the same boat.
Yeah, and
It's
that's what I love about your where you're working currently at Doctolib, because it has such a direct, visible impact on people's lives. If we shorten the interaction with the tool, doctors can spend more time with patients. I mean, I can't imagine a better metric. Now, I'm curious though, you mentioned that bug that became a feature, and that you as an engineer need to understand what does that mean. And I heard that you're asking a lot of questions around that to make sure that you are understanding that. How does that then flow into your technology decisions? Can you give an example how you've used insights around customers, and how you then manage to balance the trade-offs between what customers need and what you can do within the technology aspect, and also maybe what that means for the Doctolib as a business?
Yeah, so I personally have been working on like improving the system that provides these slots to you as a patient or as a doctor, so that you can choose when you would have an appointment, right? And this is in the current iteration, the old one, let's say, right? It's a very complex, very big system, very hard to understand. And by understanding what the customer really needs, right, what the patient needs, what the doctor needs, what the HCP needs, um, being able to understand that, you find ways to simplify it. I wouldn't be able to simplify it otherwise, because I would break everything, right? Like, even though I might have some specifications, I can't guarantee that all of the uses exist, right? All of the uses that are being used, they don't exist as specifications, because, as I was saying, people found workarounds, found ways to use the system in a way that maybe wasn't foreseen, right? But we found ways. And this is like, honestly, some of the things that we did, even though that they might change the way that the system behaves. So we have some very interesting things, like the old system might give you like an empty space between two appointments in some cases, right? The new system doesn't, because the new system doesn't have the same implementation of it. But now, what's the question is should we fulfill the needs of the, like, should we be the same as the old system, or should we be actually thinking about the needs of the customer? So the needs of the customer come first, right? And that gives you a great insight onto how you should move. You shouldn't really care if you find a discrepancy between the old and the new system, right? And you understand that that discrepancy doesn't affect the user. Why go and fix it? Just find a way to remove that discrepancy from your metrics, right?
Yeah.
So we just ignore those errors because they're not errors. It's correct, right? 2 slots offset by 10 minutes doesn't make a difference. The
Yeah.
patient will still get an appointment, right? The doctor will still have a full time. They will still treat the patient. And I think that's, like kind of vision, mission, perspective, thinking of the greater need and what's important, and then understanding what you would break if you didn't do something, or what you don't break by not doing some additional work, right? Is really important. So if you don't understand the product as an engineer, sometimes the decision is impossible for you to make. And then it
Yeah.
takes you weeks and weeks to actually get to the decision, because now you're consulting 15 other people to understand whether this is so or not so. And it's really not that hard to get there, I think. Like, a lot of organizations give you the opportunity to gather that knowledge, to get the business understanding of what is trying to do. But the main topic for me is, like, you have to, kind of perk up your ears and listen, and keep absorbing that knowledge, right? And build that product side, and then work with your product managers. Talk to them. They're your best resources in this regard, And sometimes it's also about talking about the problem that you have. Just say it out loud. Just by saying it out loud, you might find the solution for it.
Yeah. So what I find really interesting of what you said is that you are asking a lot of questions around why, not just about the challenge at hand, like we need to schedule or create a system that enables doctors and patients to schedule slots, but you're thinking even beyond that. How does that fit into the life of a doctor, and how does that make the overall work easier? And the same for the patient, to make sure that you're really understanding the context of what you're changing within with that
Yeah,
small part that you're focusing on.
take the holistic approach, right? Try to look at the whole thing. I know that it's hard to sometimes, have like a big overview of something, right? It may be very daunting, because it's like you think of, oh my God, this is so many things together, and this thing works like this, and this thing works like this, right? Here is the doctor scheduling things. Here is the radiology room. Here is the patient. They have to come, blah blah, right? And it can very quickly feel overwhelming. But it's all about breaking down the problems, and then kind of having more of an abstraction the further you go away, right? So
Yeah.
just, whilst you're thinking about it, yes, you can dive deep into that part, but everything else that comprises the whole system, that comprises the actual value that we're delivering to the customer, that should always be there, right? That user value, that should always be behind, like, in the back of your head, kind of slowly, like a little, I don't know, mole kind of digging through your brain, and getting that information. And
Yeah.
then you can continuously think of the long-term value that you're bringing, right? It's not, sometimes you have to do something quickly and to just get across the line, but a lot of the time, if you do that and still think about the long-term value, if you still think, how am I going to help the user, right? You can still get a lot of value long-term, right? And you know also that some of the changes you do are different, because you know that this is going to be long-term value,
Yeah.
right? So
And that's a great motivator.
yeah, like, I mean, to me, the best thing ever, right, is when I have a quick cycle, right? So create something and get feedback very quickly. And once you get feedback, you see that it's no positive, negative, it doesn't matter. Adjust, go cycle, and now it's slightly better, right? And this is the thing that we want to do. A lot of engineers get a lot of great experiences out of being able to quickly see the results that they have brought. This is why I very strongly believe in making success visible by showing people what their effects have been. Uh, like going back to what I was talking before, right, with messaging in the dating app. Like we were able to shorten the time frame between somebody sending a message and somebody receiving a message from like 15 minutes to seconds, right? And suddenly the conversations on the application were completely different. Because now somebody would send a message, instantly the other person, the other party would see it, they would respond, and now it's a flowing conversation. It's not sending letters anymore. Now messages are suddenly shorter because they can be. You don't have to send a whole essay, right? And it's not as daunting, and it's a lot easier. Changes the tone of voice and everything in the discussion. So it's thinking of that, right? We it took us a long time to get to the point where we could do that, but we learned, we understood, we saw what the solutions were, right? And then just constantly seeking what we are trying to do. If you're running a dating site, you want people to meet. If you really care about, the actual goal of the dating site, the actual goal is get people off the dating site, right? Like that should be, if we're talking about the dating site as a whole, right? It should be, hey, I want somebody to meet somebody. Of course, you have different areas, right? If we're talking about a poly dating site, it's going to be different, but that's okay, right? You have to understand your customer, you have to understand how it works. And that's why also there's no silver bullet. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
What's really interesting from the examples that you're giving is you are talking about value for the customer, but also business value in some ways. And at the same time, quick feedback cycles. If we think about measuring value, can you share a little bit about your experience around that? How that's driving decision making for you, but also how that's helping to make value visible back to your stakeholders for the impact that you are creating.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot of things that we can measure, right? Like one of the things that I think we kind of ignore sometimes is like the whole stability and resilience topic, right? So I want the user to be always able to use the platform, right? I want the user to always have a great experience. Um, I want to see the cycle of data. Like you have KPIs that you can always look at. Let's say that we're talking about a calendar here, right? And the making the appointments. If I can ensure that the calendar is as full as possible correctly, right? Whatever correctly means for the customer in that regard, right? So saying I'm I'm able to achieve an 80% fill rate consistently or a 90% fill rate consistently, and this is a good benchmark, let's say in this speciality. Let's say that it's a good benchmark for general practitioners. If that's a good KPI, right? But it's also a KPI that is going to be kind of hard to track on the short cycle. Instead of the short cycle, you might have to look at something like how many people give up during the booking process because they couldn't find an appointment, or how many of them give up because during the booking process they clicked on an appointment slot, they got it reserved, but then in the end something went wrong and they couldn't get through, right? It's like it's the usual funnel perspective, right? Create a funnel, understand the funnel, see why people are kind of falling off the funnel, understand if that's something that is acceptable or not, and then try to improve it. And then this is something that you can track week by week. This is something that you can test in an A/B test. You can ensure that you have two groups, you give them different experiences, and you see that one of them performs better. They're happier, right? And
Yeah.
then ties back to business like to business value. It's critical, right? Like we are working for a company in the end of the day. If we want the company to succeed, if we want to be paid, like this is one of the my first learning as an employee was when I was working in the summer for a farmer in Slovenia on the Slovenian coast. And we had like a lot of really good interactions. But one of the things they said to me is, look, if you don't do a good job, I cannot make any money, and what am I going to pay you with then? Uh, Grass or ground? Like I can't pay you if you don't make a difference. And I agree. I think that there's like a different discussion in there about being paid the right amount for what you contribute. Sure, but that's not the topic. The topic is I need to do a good job if I want the company to succeed because I care about what it brings. I mean, I also want to get paid in the end. So if I don't bring any value, what's the point of me being there? I don't want to be somewhere and not bring any value. That's
Yeah.
important to me.
And I hear that thinking about value and measuring that is really ingrained in your practice. What would you say to someone who says, oh, but I don't have access to this kind of data. Someone else in the organization defines it, but they haven't told me. How can an engineer get access and make sure that they can integrate that into their work? Do you have any tip there?
It's been quite some time since I've been in an organization where data hasn't been freely accessible. So maybe I'm sure that there are. A lot of the time, I feel like telling people what you are trying to achieve and explaining that this is, for everybody's good can really help you convince people to move your way. So if you need data, ask, say so, tell them why. People get super excited when you start telling them, "Hey, I need to understand this data because I would like to improve the experience of the user." People just go mad. Like it's amazing. Like you can see their eyes light up because they want you to do that, but they don't know how to get you to. Right? As an engineer, you can get data. You can make data as an engineer. You can create data. Like we are engineers, we write the applications, we have logs, we have monitoring tools, we have so many things. I've used tools that aren't built to monitor specific things so many times. Like generally we use Datadog for monitoring like technical performance and things like that. And you can have business metrics in there, but you would usually only put business metrics in there that you use for monitoring the system to see that if the system is working correctly. Otherwise, the rest of the business metrics you would usually have like a different tool, like a Tableau or something like that. But at the same time, you can find a way, right? Find a way to use it. If it's a short term, find a way to get the data in. If they don't want to share it with you, try to understand why. What is it that what is it that they're afraid of? Are they scared of you leaking data to somebody? Are they afraid of you telling somebody some company secrets? Because if that's the case, uh, there must be something else as well. Like we all have contracts that prevent us from, disseminating information without having a problem afterwards legally, let's say. Hopefully not, but sometimes it could happen. So just find a way, right? I think that sometimes also not asking permission, but asking people to what was it? Ask, not ask, don't ask permission, ask for um,
Forgiveness.
forgiveness. We're all consummate professionals, right? We can do things. Nobody's going to. I don't think anybody's ever going to be angry with you if you do something with a good intent, right? We all
Yeah.
make mistakes, right? But as long as they can feel and they can see that your intent is there, like what you're trying to do is good, you're trying to help, you're trying to improve, nobody's gonna say no. Nobody's gonna be angry with you.
Yeah, that's a really good and important point. So, Matjaž, you shared a lot of things that are really ingrained in your practice that are easy and almost second nature, it sounds to me. I'm wondering if we're thinking about bringing product thinking, that customer value focus into your engineering work. What were things that were hard for you, and how did you overcome it?
Ah, so for me, one of the problems to get into product thinking was actually first breaking my own limits, right? Like I was at some points I was afraid that this isn't my job, this isn't what I should do, this isn't this is somebody else's job. I don't want to make them feel bad, right? That's a hard thing to move past sometimes, but it's just turn it around. Don't think it's somebody else's job. It's everybody's job. You're not trying to steal their job. You're trying to support them. You're trying to help them. This is like, as long as your intent is good, no problem in that. Um, do you have problem getting people to support you in your product thinking? Um, Try to sell it. People don't want you to do it because they're worried about something. Try to understand what they're worried about. Most of the time, when somebody's trying to stop you from doing something, it's not so much about you. It's about them. It's about their security. It's about them being worried about their position. Just make sure that they know that you're not here to stop them. You're not here to interrupt. You're here to help. And then the other thing, I think we limit ourselves, right? Oh, I'm not capable of thinking like a product manager. Of course you are. Everybody's capable of doing anything. Like I think that any person could be a software engineer, to be honest. A lot of people didn't have the opportunity, didn't have the chance, and so they're not. Same goes for product engineering. I mean, it's all about putting in the work and you know doing the things that need to be done. So I honestly think that overall the majority of the limited problems that we have are really self-imposed, right? Like we should all be able to get that. And okay,
Hmm.
I understand that sometimes like there's too much complexity and so on. Break it down into smaller pieces. Try to think of it in smaller areas and then work with others to support you. Like maybe to get alone we are weak, but together we are strong, right? So we're all trying to push towards the same thing. It's the same boat that we're in. We're all trying to row the boat in the same direction, kind of, right? I'm not here to drill a hole. Nobody's here to drill a hole in your boat. Everybody's here to help you, right? So if you approach it that way, it's a lot easier. People feel it.
I love the points that you shared. I'm wondering if I can nudge you a little bit to share a personal story. I know these can be hard, but thinking about where you've encountered one of those things that were hard, could you share a story
Mhm.
around how you personally tackled that?
So it's like when I started working as Doctolib, I had a lot of work to do to find a way to work in Doctolib. Every organization that you join is a bit different, right? Doctolib has it's been around 10 years. There's quite a lot of people that have been there for a long time, right? So these people have um, a lot of weight. Let's put it that way, right? Not in a bad way. They're really nice people, and I really like them. But sometimes you end up in a conflict with somebody because you are outspoken. Like I'm generally somebody who is very, very outspoken. So I would bring up topics often, and sometimes people would just not be very happy that I'm bringing those topics up. Even to the point where somebody at some point said that they thought I had a personal problem with them. And it was kind of a wake-up call for me to understand that like people perceive me as having a personal problem with them, which was shocking. It took me quite a bit of thinking and understanding, discussing with my wife, find ways to share the load, share the burden, discuss with somebody. Uh, Even just talking about something helps you think it through. Um, I I had been a bit rough, as in have had said to somebody that, you can't just do something that creates work for somebody else and then put the work onto them, right? Like that was my perception, but I didn't really say it the right way, right? I didn't approach it the right way, so I got a little bit of a hit on the head. And I learned from it. Every organization requires a different approach. Like you find better ways of communicating, right? You can say the same thing 100 different times, different ways, right? So find the right way to say things, find the right way to get through to people, because in the end, it's not important about how big your ego is or somebody else's ego is. It's about what you achieve, right? If I don't even care if the thing has my name on it in the end, right? I know that it was partly my achievement and I helped. Now, if somebody else takes all the glory for it, I don't really care. I know what I've done, right? Like that's the most important thing for me. And to me, kind of getting to the point where I'm able to say, yes, okay, I will let this go, and I will find a better way to discuss this, and I will think about things, and I will focus on what the goal is. How can I help the user, as we were talking about before? How can I help the customer? Does me having conflict here help the customer? No. Can I
Mm.
talk to people that can help me find ways to not have that conflict? Yes. So let's keep doing it, right? Like, just keep going, day in, day out. In the end, it's all about persevering, in my opinion. Even though you might feel sometimes that there's nothing that can be done. I feel like for me, I've been really hard at work in Doctolib, even in changing some things from a technology perspective, getting people to do things in a different way. And you would be surprised, right? Sometimes you feel like you're screaming into the void, but then like 3 months later, you find out that people are using the same words that you have been using the whole time, right? Suddenly, there's like so many things that are working the right way, and you never said the thing to the specific person that's changed their tune, right? You didn't say it to them, but it came around. You just have to make sure that enough people change their mind, and then you're changing the minds of the whole organization. And
Yeah, I
then,
really love that. And you talk about changing the minds of people and the organization, but I hear from your story that you're also reflecting on how are you changing your approach and how you think about things. And again, you link that back to, does that create value for the customer? So you're applying product thinking not only to your technology decisions, but also how you navigate the organization. Is that
yeah,
conversation adding value for customers or not in the way you're having that? So that's a really interesting take on things.
yeah, I think it finds like it's one of the things that I've learned also at Wayfair is like disagree and commit, right? Sometimes it just makes sense. You don't have to be right. It doesn't have to be your choice. Doesn't matter. Is you discussing this now for the next 3 hours going to help the customer or not? Is it going to make a tangible difference? If not, stop. Just forget it. It doesn't matter. There's going to be
It's one of my
another.
favorite principles, actually.
Yeah,
Disagree and commit, because you can discuss things to an nth degree. You can find a compromise after 5 hours, but why not take that hypothesis of what that could work? You
yeah.
disagree, but let's go do it, get data, and then we'll see whether it works or not.
But you keep cycling. Keep iterating. Find a way to iterate. As soon as you can find a way to iterate, the faster you iterate, the faster you get to the right solution. And it's not a perfect solution, but it's the right one at the time, right? So you can keep iterating to get the perfect one if it makes sense. I would strongly disagree that it ever makes sense to get the perfect solution because I'm an engineer. I believe that good enough is good enough, and we can stop that. But beyond that, it's the same thing that we were talking about the whole time. If we're talking about user value, good enough is the most important part.
Hmm.
Then we can, refine it to till the cows come home. But that's not important. The important thing is that user is now getting value out of it.
Yeah,
And then we can make them have more value out of it. And then that's really the achievement.
yeah. So move fast, iterate, and have a focus on value. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So, should all technologists, all software engineers apply product thinking to their practice?
I think so. I think it's a great from my perspective, it's a great way to accelerate your career as an engineer. And being able to kind of step in and understand what the value that is being created is, adapt the technological choices based on the product needs, and also build software in a way that is a lot more aligned with the long-term value that the company brings and the long-term value that you can bring as an engineer can make you shine. Suddenly you're working on a project and that project is going at twice the pace in 3 months because you've removed all of the craft. All of the unnecessary things are not there. You know what is actually the value. You can discuss with the product manager and say, hey, these are the things that are of the most value here. Let's iterate so that we get those first. And then we can look at whether it makes sense for us to do these nice things, make it shiny. And yeah, shiny is value, don't get me wrong, but we need to understand what is the core, like what is the bread and potatoes. That's the important part. And to me, that's product thinking, right? Understanding what the customer needs and helping them, that's what you need. And I don't think that there's a limit to engineering being able to do that. I think you can apply it in any work, to be honest. Like I would be able to apply it if I was a farmer. Like that's not, it's not like it's a limitation, right? We can all apply product thinking. It's just about thinking in a way where we're always focusing on that 80% essentially, making sure that our customer gets the majority of things done the way that they need to and that they get value out of it. And then customer satisfaction will follow.
Yeah.
If a customer gets value out of something and the value is greater than what they had to put in, I'm never going to see them cry about it.
You mentioned something just now that reminded me of an earlier conversation we had, which was about removing things. So, of course, removing obstacles in people's lives, but also actually removing technology that isn't necessary. And I think that I find really interesting. And that's something I don't hear people talk about a lot.
Well,
Usually we talk about building more. So, can you talk a bit more about removing technology,
yeah.
building
So,
less?
so one of my core focuses as a technologist is velocity, right? Is being able to deliver at pace. And for this, in my opinion, we have to be a bit brutal with our products and understand that complexity, if it's unnecessary, it just slows us down. And in the same vein as what we were talking about the whole time, if we're applying product thinking, if we're thinking about the user, us being able to move at the fastest pace possible is the core, right? Us being able to deliver the most we can to the customer as fast as we can is important, which means that anything that isn't used, anything that creates more complexity in the product should be removed. It's
Yes.
not even a question of should we or should we not. No, we should, right? We shouldn't keep things that don't bring value. Of course, if there's complexity that brings value, then that's a different topic. But we should be looking at it the same way, right? It's the same thing as return on investment. Um, you know, you're investing something into the product, and then there's more activity in the product, there's more subscriptions in the product. So there's a return on investment. Same goes here, right? It's just not necessarily monetary. It's more of if people aren't using a piece of software, I still have to maintain it as an engineer, right? You still have to maintain the specifications as a product manager, right? We still have so much work that needs to be done. It's not free. So that's not being free means that it's taking time, and that time is being taken away from us delivering value to the customer.
Yes.
We need to deliver more value to the customer. So remove complexity. If you don't need it, remove it. And it's like no software is, it's not a child, thankfully, right? So to me, all software can be removed at some point.
Yeah.
All codes, like I'm not emotionally attached to it. If you decide to destroy the service that I created 3 days ago, so be it. If that's the important part, then let's do it. It doesn't matter because it's not a child. It's we shouldn't be attached to it that way.
Yes, totally. And there's definitely a return on investment case to be made on this, right? Like you said, keeping it, there is work involved with keeping it. But if no one's
Yeah,
using it, we're not getting value for it. So we're spending money on something that's not bringing value for customers or the business. And
yeah,
also, we're spending time on something that isn't used when we could be using that time on creating new value, new innovation that helps to improve people's lives. So it's actually a double case for stopping things that don't bring value and doing this as fast as possible.
yeah. And then this is the last part is maintenance, right? I know that sometimes engineers have problems explaining to product people why do we need to do this refactoring, you know? And it's like I know that some product people are quite like product managers can get quite testy when you say, hey, we need to do a refactoring. It's like, come on, why are you doing this refactoring? What's wrong? I'm like, this is the thing. If we don't do the refactoring, then we're going to slow down at some point, right? I love the pivotal idea. Sadly, pivotal is no more, right? It's been absorbed into VMware, but the pivotal idea of being fast forever, right? Build your system in a way where you can keep iterating forever, and when you're always going to be able to be fast. It's not about how much I can ship in one sprint. It's about how much I can ship in 1,000 sprints, right?
Yeah.
Because like that one sprint, it could be just one of 1,000, and that one sprint is 100%, and every other one is 2%. Then you haven't done a good job. You're not delivering value for the user.
Yeah, totally. So, following up on my question that we started a few minutes ago around whether all engineers should apply product thinking, I wonder what prevents people from doing that. So, we can say, yes, everyone should. That's nice for us to discuss. But what do you see that sometimes prevents engineers from applying it to their practice? And maybe how can they overcome that? Or how can an organization or their colleagues help them overcome that?
I I see sometimes it's about silos. Sometimes it's about what we were talking about before. Hey, it's not my job, and I'm not entitled to it, right? Um, these are all things that essentially can happen. The organization doesn't want it sometimes, even though I believe that the value of it is intrinsic, right? And every organization should want it if they know what they're trying to do, because having people that you can discuss with at the same level as a product manager, with being able to talk to engineers in product parlance and understand, knowing that they understand the product will always help. Um, and I think that the best way to do things is being, loud. I'm not saying here shout. I'm just saying say it. Keep saying it until things change. A lot of organizations nowadays are quite willing to listen. I haven't seen many that aren't, right? And then find people that are going to be your allies. You would find it very surprising. Like, you wouldn't find it very surprising, I don't think, if you started talking to people and found out that a lot of them think the same, but they're just not speaking up because we have like people are different. Some of us are very outgoing, some of us aren't, right? Don't count on it. Don't count that everybody's outgoing if you are outgoing. Don't count on everybody's not outgoing if you're not. So just speak up, find allies, talk to people, and work together. And it's all about organizing, in my opinion, right? Like you will also find that the good managers are going to be stimulating you to do that. I know that it wasn't called product thinking; it was like business understanding. This is something that's been in engineering for a long time, at least for me. Like people have been talking about, you have to understand the business. You have to understand how the business works. That's product thinking, right? That's understanding how the product works. That's understanding what it's supposed to do. It's just one step further. And it's easier to talk about product thinking because you have it closer to you as an engineer, right? So go talk to your product manager, go for lunch, go for coffee. It doesn't have to be something like a meeting, right? And the other thing of establishing personal connections in work is just important, not because you're going to make friends, but because you're going to build yourself up. You're going to find ways to kind of grow. You're going to find ways to develop this product thinking that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And if at all possible, I think that one of the last things, which is really important, is if you can dog food, if you can use it for something at work, if there's a way for you to use your product, not, don't try to generate a way of doing it. That's not going to work. I've seen people try, but if there's a way for you to dog food it, do use it yourself, right? I mean, I have the luck of being able to use Doctolib myself. I do use Doctolib, like the professional side of Doctolib, quite a bit, but that's because I'm, trying to understand how things work and trying to understand why they work in a certain way. It's not my job though, so it's not the same.
Yeah. You shared a lot of really, really good tips along our conversation, Matjaž. I wonder what were like 3 things that you would say, 3 principles that helped accelerate your impact and make you successful in bringing product thinking into your practice.
So for me, it's like be the user. Even though you're not actually using the product, try to think from the same perspective. Can you put yourself in the user's shoes? Can you try things out? Even better, if you can, get to the user, talk to them, right? That's really valuable to get input from them. Um, find numbers. Be able to kind of track your progress, and not necessarily as an individual, but as a team, as an organization. They will motivate you. They will help you be, the better you, right? Find ways to move forward. And then the one thing is that's always true, no matter if it's in business or outside of business, ask questions. If you don't ask questions, you're not going to learn the answers, and you can't improve. There's no way to get there. And a lot of times you get to the point of like, oh my God, I have no idea why somebody did this. This is crazy. They must have been insane. But then if you start asking yourself questions and understanding why they did that, now suddenly it's not insane. Now it has a reason. Now there's intent. There's limitation that exists that they didn't know about. And this doesn't just apply to a product. It applies to engineering. It applies to anything in life. Like
Yeah.
intent exists. Find out what it is.
And if someone now listens and thinks, if there's one thing that I, as an engineer, should start doing tomorrow to bring product thinking into my practice, what should that be?
Listen to your product managers. Talk to your product managers. Challenge your product managers. You know, ask questions with the intent of understanding why things are the way that they are. There's usually, at least in my organization, and I've seen in others, there's tons of user research nowadays that you could read, look into. Every organization generally has some kind of product updates. Just looking at, like, watching those, being there is really helpful, right? Understand what the news is, what changes are, right? That's really, really important. Just keep searching for knowledge. I think that that's the most important thing that I could say.
And what would be your pro tip? Someone who is already bringing product thinking into their work, how can they take it even further?
Look at how you, I would say, like, look at how you currently interact with, like, the people around you, business, product, everything, everybody in there, right? Do you understand why marketing does campaigns at this time of day? Do you understand what they're trying to achieve? Do you understand how customer care is suffering because of the change that you pushed on Friday evening? Do like things like this? Like, are you feeling the others in your orbit? Are you feeling the others that are working with you? And are you looking at how you can help them and help yourself in process? To me, that's really, really important.
Amazing. Thank you, Matjaž. One final question. This podcast is all about creating better products. So, why is it so important that engineers bring product thinking into their practice? And how does that impact creating better products?
I think it's important because we find better solutions to the problems that we're faced with. We understand, if you understand what the target is, then you're better at building the solution to achieve it. If you don't, you always find some kind of abstraction, some kind of complexity that seems to make more sense. It's all about, because I am thinking with the value that is being brought to the user in mind, because I am thinking from a product perspective, the product ends up being better because it fits better with what it's supposed to do. I
Yes.
understand what it is, so it's easier for me to carve it out of the stone that exists, right? Like you have some basic materials. If you know what you're trying to do with it, with the material, it's easier to get there, right? If you're just doing small pieces and then assembling them together afterwards and not knowing what the full assembly is going to be, it's going to be harder to do. So I think that if we all apply product thinking, we're going to be better at delivering the value to the user.
Yes. Thank you, Matjaž. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, what are 3 books or articles or podcasts that you would recommend to our listeners to listen to?
So I would definitely, one of the books that was very, very critical for my growth was the Staff Engineer's Path by Tanya Riley. She talks a lot about what it is to be a staff engineer, and I feel like, to me, a part of that was also product thinking and understanding the business and understanding the existence of why we're doing things. So I would definitely put that one like first place. I'm not a big podcast listener. I'm not gonna lie. I've listened to very few podcasts, and it's mostly because it doesn't really work for my brain the way that it works for me. But I have a couple more books. So another book that I really really liked, and also quite topical, I think, is The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim. I've loved that book since I was like since the first time I've read it. It was such an informative piece of novelist's work. Um, so I'm not sure it was just Gene Kim that wrote it, but he's the one that I remember. So apologies to anybody else that was part of that. Um, and then the third article book. I don't really know. I would say that the only thing that I could still say is an essay, but it's a very old one. It's I don't know if you've heard of Oscar Wilde. Probably you have.
What's
So there's an essay that he wrote, "The Soul of Man Under Socialism," and it's basically discussing the difference between being an artist and being a craftsman. And I
Mhm.
think that, to me, that was it's a bit of a weird one, but to me that was critical for understanding how much value you know being a craftsman can be, and it is art in the end. And I think we're all great craftspeople at what we do, and honing your craft is valuable, and it's as as impressive as any artistry. Like there's no difference between really accomplished craftsmanship and artistry, in my opinion. Like there's like peas in a pod.
Fascinating. Really good mix of recommendations. Thank you, Matjaž, for sharing those. And where can people find you if they want to reach out and to connect and talk a bit more with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I don't really do much social media, to be honest, but I will respond on LinkedIn if you just tell me that we would like to discuss things about things like that. Or if you are in Berlin, you can always come to Travolta, which is like a bar next to Görlitzer Park on Tuesdays at 7, or from 7 on. There's like this German English language exchange where I've been going for now, 7 years, where I met my wife. It's a lot of very interesting, cool people that are quite, you know, good at discussing things. So sometimes you might be able to get some product thinking from that.
Amazing. Matjaž, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your experience. It's been really, really interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak with you. It's been a pleasure.
And now a question to our listeners. What is your experience as a technology or engineering leader in bringing product thinking into your practice? What were your successes and setbacks? How have you been able to do this? Please share your experience in the comments or reach out to me directly. I would love to hear from you. And finally, if you liked what you heard today and enjoyed this episode as much as I did, please share it with your network and give us a like and subscribe in your favorite streaming platform. And by doing this, you help to elevate the voice of our amazing guests. And today, this was Matjaž. So thank you and see you next time.